Yeah, we're looking at Perek Yud. Again, there's so many things here. It's kedai to go over it and over it and over it, but just trying to cover basic pshat. We're in Perek Yud. This is the last Perek of the Even Shelaima, and these are different inyanim of Geula. And the very last thing we looked at was Sif Gimel, which says Hagula Hazais Lotia Rak Al Yidei Limud HaTorah, that the Geula will come through Limud HaTorah. Okay, that doesn't sound such a big chiddush, but then he says Ikar Hagula Talia B'Limud HaKabbalah. He says, and of the thing that will bring the Geula, the Ikar Limud is going to be the Limud of Kabbalah, the Limud of Nister, the Limud of the hidden dimension of the Torah. Now this is, quite a big chiddush, and again, if you look in the so in the Haggah here, they bring the sources, right? This is from the Mechaber of Even Shelaima, of Shmuel Malzin, and his son Rav Yitzchak Malzin. So he brings that the makor of this is the Raya Mehemna Tikune Zayar, a lot of Rosh Tevis here, but Raya Mehemna Tikune Zayar Tikune Zayar Chadash. So it just shows you the amazing number of commentaries the Gra wrote on Sifrei Kabbalah. The Raya Mehemna means the faithful shepherd, which is Moshe Rabbeinu. It's called the Raya Mehemna, but that's a chelik of the Zayar. See, the Zayar has many, many different portions, and each portion of the Zayar has a different name, and they're referred to by different names. So Raya Mehemna, Safra Ditzniasa, these are parts of the Idra Rabbah, the Idra Zuta. So in the Raya Mehemna, the Tikunei Zayar and Tikunei Zayar Chadash, the Gra wrote Perushim on all of these things. He wrote much more on Nister than Nigla. And this is where he says that the Ikar Hagula is Talia B'Limud HaKabbalah, and he brings a very, very interesting pshat in the davening. In Ava Rabbah, right, the bracha of Ava Rabbah, which is the bracha that you say before Kriya Shema in the morning. And as you know, I'm sure you know the halacha, that Ava Rabbah, as well as Avas Olam at Ma'ariv, B'di'evet, one is Yotzei Birchas HaTorah, right? Let's assume I forgot to say Birchas HaTorah, but I already davened Shachris, or in the middle of davening Shachris, so the halacha is I should be mechaven to be Yotzei Birchas HaTorah with Ava Rabbah, and the only t'nai is that as soon as I finish davening, I have to learn something. And then I don't say Birchas HaTorah. I was Yotzei Birchas with Ava Rabbah. So the lashon is in Ava Rabbah we say v'sein b'libeinu bina, give us understanding, lilmaid ulalamed, right, to learn and to teach, lishmor v'lasais, to observe and to keep. Lishmor is to keep the losasas, lasais is to do the mitzvah sasei. It's divrei Talmud Torah be'ava, and then it says v'ha'er eineinu b'Torah, enlighten our eyes. So I wouldn't say this is mukhrach, but this is the pshat the Gra offers. Lil Maidul Lamed is referring to the nigla of Torah, Shas, Taiskin, Chumash, Halacha, Mishnayos. V'ha'er eineinu b'Torah, but the light of the eyes is the nister of Torah, what's called the penimius HaTorah. So you see the Seder HaDvorim, that first you're lilmaid ulalamed, lishmer b'laseis, and then you progress to a higher madrega, v'ha'er einenu b'seiresecha, and then it says v'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanfei sa'aretz, the prayer of Geula. Because you might ask a kasha, right? It's a good kasha, b'chlal and pshat. If Ava Rabbah is about Torah, why do you stick in Vavienu l'shalom, bring us in peace from all of the corners of the world? That's a separate sugya. That's kibbutz goliath. So he says, no, that's good for the remes. That Ava Rabbah is telling me that through the limud haTorah we're going to be zeicha to geula, and since v'ha'er einenu is referring to the penimius haTorah, it's the penimius haTorah that's going to bring you to kibbutz goliath through Moshiach and the like. So again, I'm not saying that, this is a raya muchrachas, that's the only way you could learn the bracha, but this is how the Gra touches up the bracha. Lil Maid Ulamed is the nigla of Torah. V'hayareinenu v'sayrasecha is the nister of Torah. And then v'haveinu l'shalom is the geula that will come as a result of the learning of the Pnimius HaTorah. However, I would just add that this Pshat Gufa, it teaches us an important thing, that you can't skip. Somebody might say, oh, well, you're telling me the geula comes from Pnimius HaTorah, so maybe I'll skip the Gemara part. I'll go straight to Kabbalah. It says, no, but dafka from the bracha you say, Lil Maidul Alamed Lishmar Velases. And when you have Lil Maidul Alamed Lishmar Velases, then V'haya Reineinu B'Sarasecha. So the Gra for sure, one thing I can tell you, I can't speak for the Gra per se, but it's a davar pashat ma'id that the Gra would not encourage, people who haven't mastered Kol HaTorah Kula already to bedafka be Isaac in Kabbalah, as sometimes people think. But still, the Gra is telling us, as we get closer and closer to Geula, there will be a greater nechitzus, a greater need to be Isaac in Pnimius HaTorah. That because we need that light, that special light, v'hayareinenu, to draw down the kayach of Moshiach into the world. So the emes is kachabe. The emes is we see this in the world. Now, once again, like many, many things, it sometimes can get distorted. There are many, many good ideas in the world that enter the world with the intention, so to speak, of being Kadesh, and then they get Mekulkel. But in their shirish, in their roots, there is still a Kedusha. Everybody can see that there is, B'davka, a great thirst for Pnimius HaTorah. I remember when I was in yeshiva, you didn't see, so many Sfas Emeses around, or Reb Tzadok's around, or Tanya, or these. The Siva Shalom wasn't written yet, that Bechal wasn't there. There was one person who, Baruch Hashem, is still teaching there. So there was Rav Nachum Lansky, he was the guy who taught about Reb Tzadok, but he was the only one person. He was our token, Hasidish Makubal in Ner Yisrael. And Baruch Hashem, after 50 years, he's still teaching. Very, very chashuva person. Rav Nachum Lansky. Generations of people already have looked at him as their Rebbe in a certain level of Pnimius HaTorah. But now you walk into any mainstream yeshiva, you walk into Mir, you walk into Panovich, you walk into Chevron, you'll see on the tables, Sfas Emes, the Hasidish, again, these are Hasidish Sfarim. They're not Kabbalah technically, but they are Kabbalah because essentially these Hasidish Sfarim are miyusad on Kabbalah. In fact, a lot of Hasidus, you might say, is a popularization of Kabbalah. It's an attempt to take the inyanim of Kabbalah and explain them in practical ways that you can apply in Derech Avodah. And if you ever learn Rav Tzadok, you'll see Rav Tzadok is filled with all sorts of references to Kabbalah, say for like Tanya, etc. And the Alter Rebbe's others from Likutei Torah, which is actually much more difficult. They're all really Kabbalah Svarim with Chasidus. As Chasidus, the Lubavitcher Rebbe once said a very good dimyan. What is the comparison of Chasidus and Kabbalah? Because it's not the same, right? Pure Kabbalah would be Zohar, Kisvei Ari, Pardes Rimonim from the Ramak. That's like pure Kabbalah. So what's Chasidus? Chasidus is not pure Kabbalah. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave a very good dimyan. He says the relationship of Chasidus to Kabbalah is like the relationship of medicine to anatomy. That is actually a very, very, very excellent dimyan. Because anatomy is describing a structure. It's the structure of the human body. But it doesn't tell you what to do about it. It doesn't tell you, okay, it says this bone and this ligament and that nerve, that's anatomy. Medicine then takes, the structures and applies, looks for techniques to practically apply it to healing and the like. So the Rebbe said, pure Kabbalah deals a lot with structure. It doesn't really tell you, what to do with the structure, but it describes the Ilamais, it describes the Sfiros, it describes how Hashem interacts with the world. It's the anatomy of the spiritual universe. Chasidus then says, okay, we have all this anatomy. What do we do for refuas hanefesh, right? So Chasidus is the medicine, and Kabbalah, pure Kabbalah, is the anatomy and the like. But whatever it is, I think it's very, very clear that the popularity of Chasidus, again, it's kind of a crass word to use, popularity, but popularity of Hasidus in the Litvish yeshiva world is connected to the notion that people's neshamas is starving for something even beyond learning halachos and learning halachos be'in and the like. And this is as we enter the ikvasa de Mashiach, the footsteps of Mashiach, there's going to be this type of hishtaikakus. The problem is, of course, that sometimes it gets distorted. So you got institutions like the Kabbalah Center or different things where people, don't learn Gemara anymore. Or maybe some people aren't even religious; they aren't even from, but they want to do Kabbalah, they want to do this and that. So that's already a distortion. That's already a kilkel of this idea. But the Yesod HaDvarim, that Pnimius Atayra is going to come to the forefront as we approach Mashiach. That already the Gra says that's going to be the emes. So that kind of explains what is going on, even in the mainstream yeshiva world. By the way, we actually have we can credit this almost to one person. It's an amazing thing. Who introduced Hasidus to the yeshiva world? The Litvish yeshiva world was normally not into Hasidus at all. Reb Dessler gets Kemat single-handed credit. Reb Dessler was, mashgiach in Panovich. Of course, he had a long career in many shtachim in Gateshead in England, in London. And Reb Dessler was Baal Musar, of course. And Reb Dessler's whole mishpacha were from the altar of Kelm. They were all in that, which we saw Salanter, etc. So Musar was in his blood. Musar Hashkav was in his blood. But he began learning Sifrei Chasidus and bringing in those ideas. And when he became Mashgiach of Panovich and he started talking about Reb Tzadok and the Balotanya, there were some of the old Alter Musar people who didn't like it. They said this was a betrayal. You're bringing in, it's Kalayim. You're bringing in a different derech. I mean, the Alter of Kelm, for example, didn't bring in Chasidus. Where we saw Salanter didn't bring in Chasidus directly. But Reb Dessler felt that this story needed a certain mizug of Chasidus and Kabbalah, along with Musar and the like. So really, Reb Dessler was Mechadesh, kind of that Mahalach, which then spread, was nispashet very much. Now, I'm not saying every single person is knighted to it. Some people, whatever, it's still not their thing. But nevertheless, I think it's miyusadam what the Gra is saying, that there will be a netiya to these types of svarim bisman hazeh. So it's a big chiddush that the Gaon is advocating Kabbalah. Now, in a way, it's not a chiddush, because let me point out, as I said already, that the Gra wrote much more on Kabbalah than he wrote on Nigla. In fact, the Gra wrote very little on Nigla. In fact, most things that he wrote on Nigla are things that Talmidim wrote over that what he said. He didn't actually write things on Nigla. The only thing on Nigla he wrote was the Bir Hagra in the Shulchan Aruch. The Bir Hagra is from the Gra, but everything else, you see Chidushei Hagra and this and that and that and that. He didn't write that. The people, Talmidim wrote it over and the like. But the Svarim on Kabbalah he wrote himself. He didn't really trust anybody to write the Svarim on Kabbalah. Tikkunei Zayar, Sefer Yetzirah, many things the Gra wrote on Kabbalah. In fact, they say that the Gra was once talking about the godless of the Shagas Aryeh. And the Gra said, okay, it's hard to know if it's true, but this is what they say in Piyah Shmua. He said, in Nigla, it's hu va'ani, meaning the Gra held, according to this, Shagas Aryeh was even greater than him in Nigla. And in Nistor, it's ani v'hu, meaning the Gra held the Shagas Aryeh was second to him in Nistor. But still, second. Shagas Aryeh was Gavaldik in both. And the Gra said, in Nistor, I'm a little ahead, and in Nigla, he's a little ahead. Who knows if those things are true, but okay. Yeah. Alrighty. Now, then, look in Sif Dalet. Bischus shemisrachakim me'aisam ha'aiskem b'limud philosophia elokis limudios v'tivios yisku liyasid lavai lior Hashem. So if Sif Gimel tells us what are the positive learning that will bring us the Geula, and that's Limud HaTorah generally, and Chachmas HaKabbalah especially. He then gives us certain limudim that will be merachek ourselves from the Geula, and therefore it's only when we're merachek from those limudim we'll be zeicha to experience Geula. And he singles out in particular what is called divine philosophy, meaning philosophical limudim. Now, this raises some interesting questions. The Gra does not define exactly what do we mean by, what is this thing about philosophy, what's wrong with philosophy. So here let me point out an interesting thing. There's a famous comment in the Bir HaGra, in the Shulchan Aruch, which the Gra himself wrote, in which the Gra brings, there are different halachas in Shulchan Aruch. You don't do certain things because of shadim, demons. Right? You don't go out at night, you don't do different things. So the Gra brings that the Rambam says in a number of places there's no such thing as shadim. It's Yadua that the Rambam says shadim are superstitions, and if Chazal talked about shadim, they don't really exist, but Chazal were merames to certain inyanim, that they use the vocabulary of popular superstition, but the shadim are lo haya v'lo nivra. Right? That's the Rambam Shita. That there's no such thing as shadim, really. So the Gra writes that the Rambam was led astray by his over-involvement in philosophia ha'arura. That the Rambam was too involved in a cursed Greek philosophy, which was based on rationalism, based on logic, based on things making sense. So when the Rambam encountered things that don't make rational sense, the Rambam said, oh, they don't really exist, etc. And he says it was philosophy that even led the Rambam astray. Those are very, very strong words. We would not have rishus to talk that way. But the Gra was very opposed in many ways. As super genius as he was, the Gra was opposed to trying to philosophically establish Ikrei Emunah. In other words, proofs that there's God, proofs that there's Torah min hashamayim. Because the Rambam felt that gufa undermines Emunah, because in order to engage in philosophical speculation, you got to start off with a standpoint of skepticism. Meaning, if we're going to discuss proofs that there is a God, then we have to bring up all the questions why people think there is no God. I mean, I can't have a philosophical discussion and not bring up all the tinus. So the Gra held that was a dangerous thing. The emphasis that goes even before the Gra, you find that's one of the reasons why there was a lot of opposition to the Moreh Nevuchim. I mean, the Gra was not the first one to take this position. There were Moreh Nevuchim was burnt in some Jewish communities because the Rambam was attempting to create a synthesis between Greek philosophy and Judaism. Greek philosophy was Aristotelian philosophy, Aristotle was the philosopher of the Middle Ages. I mean, there was no Greece or Rome then, but this was the Yesod. And there were people who were rational thinkers, and they couldn't understand korbanos or demons or all these things. So the Moreh Nevuchim gave different mahalchim for these things. So the Gra said that undermines emunah in the emes of Torah. And therefore the Gra felt you have to be merachik yourself from philosophy, because philosophy raises questions about ikrei emunah, and therefore one should get away from it. One should not get involved in those types of questions. And again, the Gra l'shita say, because that's exactly what the Gra says in the Bir HaGra, Keneged the Rambam. Similarly, in the great Sefer Chovos HaLevavos, it's Chovos, it's plural, not Chovos HaLevavos, unlike Chovas HaTalmidim. Chovos HaLevavos means duties of the heart, right? Now, this is a very old Sefer. Chovos HaLevavos is from the generation before the Rambam. In fact, the Rambam is made that his father's favorite Sefer was Chovos HaLevavos, which at the time was in Arabic. Chovos HaLevavos was written in Arabic and translated into Hebrew. So Chovos HaLevavos talks about bitachon, emunah, tshuva, anava, avas Hashem. Each chapter is called a shar. Shara Bitachon is a gewaldige chapter that one learns to develop Amuno Bitachon. Shar HaBechina is looking at nature to see the Chasdei Hashem, looking at flowers and music and all these. Right? It's also something that's a person. So all of that is wonderful. But the very first chapter of Chayvas Halavavas, the very first one, is called Shar HaYichud, the Gate of Unity, which is a long philosophical discussion to prove, number one, that a supreme God exists, and number two, he's only one. And it does it philosophically. And the Gra has stated, all of Chayvas Halavavos is wonderful, except for Shar HaYichud. So start Chayvas Halavavos from chapter 2. Do not even read chapter 1. Again, consistent L'Shita say that the Gra was mezalzel in those inyanim of philosophy. That's why, there's a very, very fine edition of Chayvas Halavavos in a modern Hebrew translation. See, the Hebrew translation of the Ibn Tibbon is very, very difficult. I know the Arabic, and then so there's a more modern flowing translation, which is much easier to read. It's called Leiv Tov, and that's probably the best if you're getting a Hebrew Chayvas Halavavos. That's probably the best one you get. They have the Ibn Tibbon translation too. In other words, it's like they're translating from Hebrew to Hebrew. There's the hard Hebrew, and then there's the easier Hebrew. So it's both things are Hebrew. So what they do is Shar HaYichud. They just give you the Ibn Tibbon. They don't delete the chapter, but they don't translate the chapter. Instead, they give you a 25-page hakdama of likutim from all of the gedolim that say don't learn it, including, of course, the Gra and other people too. So the Gra, l'shitase, the Gra was not machshav philosophy, and not only wasn't he not machshav it, he considered it to be destructive. It's not just not machshav it. He says, if you're merachek yourself from philosophy, you will be zeicha to the ohr Hashem liyasid loving. So the question you're going to ask is, so wait a second here. Or Sameach, Eish Torah, listen, it's not the only thing we do, Baruch Hashem. There's Gemara and, Simei Tziyumim, but a lot of what you might call Baal Shuva yeshivas do is explore the basic philosophy of Judaism, right? Rabbi Gottlieb, gives, many shiurim in this, including the Moreh Nevuchim. So he's already violating the Gra, right? Doing Moreh Nevuchim. So, all right, he's already in trouble. Okay. So what's the pshat? So the answer is really pashut. The answer is really pashut. The answer is that this is a very pragmatic issue, meaning the Gra says it's better not to open a Pandora's box. You open a certain box, you get yourself in Sveikus, then you become a kolkol. Okay, beseder. But what if a person is already a kolkol? Right? You read college courses, and Richard Dawkins and Christopher, what's the guy's name? Christopher Hutchins, Sam Harris, all of these guys. You already been exposed to it. So behechrich, evolution, whatever the issue is. So behechrich, you have to have a mahalach. In other words, it's two different things. Maybe Taka, the fact that we have to go through these things, is a b'diavad. It would have been better had we not have to go into these mahalchim at all. But once a person has been exposed to all of these inyanim, so we have an achrayus. Not only is it mutter, we have an achrayus to give a person mahalchim to bring them to the derech of Torah. So it's not really a stira. I think the Gra is basically telling us what the best derech would be. But lamaisa, obviously, if somebody has already not been on that derech, we have to find ways to bring them back. So it's not really a stira. Now, the emes is, though, I would actually say, though, that the Rambam Gufa is chaylik on the Gra, because the Rambam actually holds that philosophical exploration is not a b'diavad. See, I'm learning that the Gra would tolerate it as a b'diavad for people that have wandered on the wrong derech. But the chatchila, keep away from it. That's what he says. The Rambam is mashma. Not mashma. The Rambam seems to say that this is a lechatchila. In fact, this is how they're miyashiv, a kasha of the Ramban on the Rambam. The Rambam says on the pasuk, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, right, the first of the Aseres HaDibros. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzeisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. Is that a mitzvah? Now, it's not written as a mitzvah. It's just a statement. I am the Lord your God who took you out of Mitzrayim. What is that saying? Says the Rambam, this is a mitzvah saseh, to be maimin, to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha is mitzvahs emunah. This is what the Rambam says in the Sefer HaMitzvahs. And he brings an eisen raya, a very strong raya, that it is a mitzvah, from the Gemara in Makos. The Gemara in Makos says that Moshe Rabbeinu gave us 613 mitzvahs. Shenemar Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe. Moshe gave us Torah. So frek the Gemara, Torah is not 613. The gematria of Torah is 611. And the Gemara's answer is, Moshe taught us 611 mitzvahs, but 2 mitzvahs we heard from Hashem. What 2 mitzvahs do we hear from Hashem? Anoichi lo yelecha. So that's a beferish araya. Anoichi is a mitzvah. So what is it a mitzvah to do? A mitzvah to believe. So frek the Ramban, a very strong kasha. How can there be a mitzvah to be a maimin? How can there be? I mean, mimanavshach. If I already believe in God, so I already believe in God. I don't need a mitzvah. Elamai, I don't believe in God, so why should I accept a mitzvah? It's like I tell an atheist, you must believe in God. The atheist says, why? He says, because God said you have to believe in him. He says, I don't believe there's such a thing. What's going to be machayev a person who's not a maimin to become a maimin? So the Ramban learns, how will he learn the Gemara in Makos is takashver. That we don't have a yishuv for right now. But he says, it's a davar pashat. It's not shayach a mitzvah to be a maimin. Rather, once you're a maimin, then that which you believe in gives you mitzvahs. So anoichi is not a mitzvah. Anoichi is a yesod to all other mitzvahs. A yesod to all other mitzvahs. So that's a strong kasha, right? What's shaykh a mitzvah to be a maimin? Once I'm a maimin, you can give me a mitzvah of Shabbos and kashrus and shatnez and tefillin and tzitzis because I'm maimin. There's a ribbani shalom. If I'm not a maimin, who's giving me a mitzvah? So the answer that they give, Sfarim give for the Rambam, is like this. Avada, even the Rambam is maida, that you can't give a mitzvah of emunah to a kafir. The mitzvah of emunah is given to somebody who believes in God. So if he believes in God, what's the tachlis of the mitzvah? The answer is, the Rambam will learn, you who believe in God because your parents taught you to believe in God, but you believe in God, you're now mechuyev to intellectually go through the process. So it becomes a rational certainty. In other words, according to the Rambam, philosophical exploration of the existence of God is in itself the mitzvah of emunah. So you actually have a machlokes here that is 180 degrees apart. What the Gra says, don't do, the Rambam actually holds, you must do. If I believe in Hashem, but I don't have all of the philosophical understanding of how that's mukhrach, according to the Rambam, that is a chisaron in my mitzvah emunah. You see? So it's very, very interesting that the Gra considered that to be wrong and a sakana. The Rambam held that's mechayev emunah. Now the problem is, from a practical perspective, the Gra has to be right, because here's the problem. Once you open yourself up to an inquiry, how do you know where you're going to end up? And I'm mechuyev to philosophically be persuaded, so to speak, that there is a God. So I'm mechuyev to open up the question and investigate it. Well, you understand the problem. On one hand, we say, well, listen, what's the sakana? The emes is the emes, so you'll come to the emes. Right? What's wrong? What are you afraid of? Problem is that, we're not computers, meaning to say our minds are not simply always going to go to the logical. Yeah, we do believe that emunah is ultimately logical. It's ultimately mukhrach. It's very true. But that doesn't mean when we actually go into that process, we're going to see it that way. Because we have taivas, we have yetzer haras, we have environmental influences. So that's the problem. The problem is, that's what I call Pandora's box, meaning you go in a certain mahalach and you assume it's going to be a confirmation of everything and you'll have a foundation and intellectually you've proved it. It doesn't always work that way. Not because there's any problem in it. There's a problem in me. Meaning we don't have the capacity to see emes with 100% clarity. So the Gra says, so maybe it's good to be a little ignorant then. Don't necessarily open the box because you don't know where it's going to take you. So Ad hayom hazeh. This is kind of a machlekes in the Torah world. How are you madrich a person? What should a person think about? What should a person go into? It's an interesting thing. Obviously, when you learn a sugya, you're using your mind. Of course you are. But you're using your mind with the acceptance of certain pashtos, meaning to say, what you're doing in Gemara is you're accepting the yesaidas that this is from Hashem. And then you're drawing out implications, which can be very, very complicated and very intricate, but you're not really going beyond the wall, meaning, if we're sitting and learning a sugya, and somebody says, how do I know, this came from Hashem? We would say, that's not a Gemara, that's not a question now. You see? So, normal limud HaTorah, we would say, is certainly very deep. But it's deep by accepting certain inyanim that you're actually not questioning. Right? So, because once you start questioning, you don't know where you're going to come out. Right? So that's the problem. That's why, l'mashal, every beis medrash in the world has the Rambam on the shelf, but usually doesn't have the Moreh Nevuchim on the shelf. And I remember some guy walked in, I was smiling a little bit. Somebody says, where do you have the Moreh Nevuchim here? He says, it's in some back room, wherever. We don't keep it in the beis medrash, whatever it is. And this is part of the issue. Okay, so I just want to point out, I made on the fact that what the Gra is saying is machlekes with the Rambam and different approaches in Avodas Hashem. Okay, so now let's look at Sif Hey. Hageula mechuna b'shem biker. Okay, this is a well-known mashal in Chazal that when many psukim talk about Laila and Yom, Laila is a remes to Golus and Hester Panim, concealment, and the Geula Ha'asida is described as Biker. Kamosha Kosov, and this is the meaning of the pasuk, a pasuk in Yeshayahu, Asa Biker V'gam Laila. Morning has come, and then followed by night. Now, of course, that's not referring to the future Geula. I mean, the future Geula will be Biker without a Laila. But it's referring to the Bayis Sheni, which was a partial Geula followed by Laila. Also, Biker V'gam Laila, that pasuk is talking about the Bayis Sheni, in which there was a Biker that became a Laila. So the Gra is just saying that Biker and Laila is a remazim to Golus and Geula. In fact, we actually see it in this week's parsha. Just to go very, very quickly. Yaakov is fighting with the angel of Esav, and they're wrestling the entire night. And sometimes Yaakov is on top, and sometimes the angel is on top. And then it comes the morning, and Yaakov is pinning the angel down, the malach down, and the malach says, "Let me go, because I have to go." Actually, I always remember this for it. It's a bit of a joke from an old Litvish Harav. He says like this. He says, "This is the derech of Rishayim. When it comes to fighting, They have all the time in the world. They'll beat you up. The Malach is not in a rush. When you're asking for a bracha, he says, gotta go. Gotta When it comes to a bracha, he's in a rush. He has to leave right away. Comes to fight it, he has the whole night to fool around there. But okay. But anyway, as Chazal say, what was really going on was that he was a Malach, and Malachim can only have one chance sometimes to say Kedusha to Hashem. I have to go back. So the Sefer, right? So what's going on? So the Malach gives him a bracha. Your name is no longer Yaakov, or only Yaakov, which is Heel. Your name is Yisrael. You triumphed with Hashem. Great bracha, Yisrael. Nitzachain, Sarara, triumph. And Yaakov is limping, right? Because the Malach did hit him on the thigh. And Al Kain, Lo Yechlu, B'nai Yisrael, we don't need the Gid HaNosheh because the sciatic nerve was dislocated. So this is a very mysterious scene, very mysterious. He's described as an Ish, as a Malach. And by the way, it doesn't say in the Chumash it's Sarah Shalasev. Chazal say Sarah Shalasev. So the Sefer HaChinuch says a beautiful, just general understanding of what's going on. That before he meets the Esav, physical Esav, Hashem is showing him a vision of what will happen to Am Yisrael. That there will be a long, long, bitter galus, which is night, cheshech, laila. And in that cheshech, the Ummos Ha'olam will try to beat us and persecute us and destroy us. And sometimes we'll be matzliach, and sometimes we're not going to be matzliach. But after that long night, is going to come a day, Amud HaShachar. And that Amud HaShachar is a remez of a Geula. And when that Geula comes, we're not going to be unscathed, meaning we're going to be limping. We're going to have suffered a lot. That's the remez. All of the tragedies, all of the deaths, all of the intermarriages, it's like limping, meaning when Moshiach comes, we will be in a very devastated condition. But it will come. And when it comes, even the nations that try to destroy us will give us a bracha. They will acknowledge the Kedusha of Am Yisrael. It's a beautiful thing. So the Sefer HaChinuch says, when we don't eat the Gid HaNosheh, we should actually think, and most of us don't think about that because it's Shevi Al Tasa, meaning if I don't eat Chazer, I usually don't think I didn't eat Chazer today. It's a Mad Nazach. Normally you associate kavanos when you do a mitzvah, not when you don't do an aveira. But the Sefer HaChinuch says, at least for Gid HaNosheh, one should have a machshava that this is Hashem's promise in Geula. That I don't need to Gid HaNosheh to remember the Maisa that Yaakov was ultimately victorious over the angel of Esav that tried to destroy him. And after the long night came the day. Of course, let me say very, very quickly, and it's not connected to anything here, that the Chavetz Chaim has a beautiful word. He brings from the Zohar HaKadosh that the thigh is the support, just like a thigh supports the body. So Yaakov represents Torah. Avraham is Chesed, and Yitzchak is Avoda, the three pillars. Yaakov is the pillar of Torah. And the thigh represents Machzikei Torah, those who support Torah. So the Sarah Shel Esav could not destroy Torah, could not destroy Yaakov. But he made the support of Torah to be very weak. And the reason why yeshivas are poor, the reason why yeshivas are limping, is because the Sarah Shel Esav was Pageya in the Yerech of Yaakov. The Yerech are the Tamchin, the Eraisa, the Machzikei Torah. Ad Kedei Kach, that the Chavetz Chaim used to say that any Maaseh of Torah that does not have financial problems, you have to be mesupik if it's teaching real Torah. Because if it's doing well, then maybe something's wrong there. So, let me say, Baruch Hashem, you are zeicha to be in a wonderful Mossad of Torah, so don't worry about it at all. You are, maybe we're not doing fine, but you are doing, because we're not doing fine, you are doing fine, right? According to the according to the Chafetz Chaim. The tamchin the. Now, it really is a pella because you think about, the world has plenty of money. That's emes. I mean, in fact, why? I mean, it's a general. Why is there starvation here and there? I mean, there is enough money in the world to take care of everything. And you think about billions, I don't know, trillions of dollars that go to every type of entertainment. Movies and every type of shtus. And there's plenty of money for these things. So how come so little of it trickles down to Torah? Even from Jewish people, even from people who care about Israel, they'll do other things. The emes that was the curse. That was the partial nitzachon of Esav. So you might ask, Kasha the Chafetz Chaim. So somebody comes to you and asks you to give money to a yeshiva. So you're going to say, hey, you're supposed to be poor. What are you bothering me? You're supposed to be poor. Why should I help you? So the answer is pashut. There's a nafkamina between a curse and a mitzvah. Meaning like this. I'll give you a dimyan. Chava was cursed after the chet of the Eitz Hadas. B'etzev tel dibanim. That birthing, pregnancy, and birth is going to be painful. Now, in the 19th century, doctors began to give anesthesia during pregnancy, during a labor, to take away the pain. There were Christian theologians, they were men, who all said, a woman is not allowed to take anesthesia because God decreed in the Bible that she has to suffer. So what do we say? We don't say that. We say it's mutter. Because Hashem didn't say you are commanded to suffer. The Eibishter said, I created a teva. The teva hadvarim is going to be that labor is naturally painful. But that doesn't mean you're not allowed to take steps to alleviate the pain. The Eibishter says, in other words, a curse, a klala, a declaration of teva, doesn't mean that you're not allowed to try to make it easier for yourself. Now, the same thing here. The Torah didn't say, I command yeshivos to struggle. Hashem didn't say that. It's not a mitzvah. Hashem said, or through the nitzachon of Esav, the teva hadvarim will be that Torah is going to be economically weak. So fakir, so instead of using that as an excuse not to support Torah, that creates a bigger achrayus. The fact that it's going to be weak means I'm mechuyev to try to build it up, right? I can't just say that someone else will do it. It could be someone else won't do it. Every person has to take that particular achrayus. Okay, so coming back here to the Gra, though, that was just a little side point about Yaakov and the Malach, that the Geula is called Baiker, and the Golus is called Laila, V'chein mechune b'shem Leida, and Geula is also called birth. So these are two mishalim, a very, very good mishalim. There is night and day, and there is pregnancy and birth. These are two mishalim in Nach to the inyan of Golus and Geula. And he brings a pasuk for each one. So for pregnancy and birth, he brings a pasuk, another pasuk in the Navi Yeshaya, Ki chala gam yaldat siyain. Chala means she has had labor pains, and siyain, meaning Eretz Yisrael or Klal Yisrael, will give birth. So what is the significance of these analogies, these mishalim? So he says, Kamo shekaidem shemaschil lahayer hayayim hu machshich b'yaser. Right, this is the English saying. The night is darkest before the dawn. So that's the remez. If we consider Golos to be Cheshech and Geula to be Yaim, that's Merames, that right before the Geula, there will be a period of intense darkness, intense persecution, struggle. Now, right before is always an ambiguous term. Right before might have been the Holocaust, which is still, 75 years or whatever it is. We hope it wouldn't be worse. But there'll be struggles. These are called the Milchamais of Gog and Magog and the like. So one dimyan is that before the light of Geula will be tremendous, tremendous darkness. And of course, that's exactly the analogy to birth. a woman goes into labor. Chavle leda, right? In other words, the Gra is simply pointing out that the use of the two mishalim, both of them lead you to the same direction, that there will be great, great hardships before Geula. In fact, that's the phrase, Chavle Moshiach. Chavle, the birth pains of Moshiach, right? Because Moshiach is birth. Now again, there is a sefer of the Torah of the Gra on Geula, which is a fascinating sefer, and maybe I'll bring in some excerpts to look at because he's marich on a lot of pratim in this chapter. It's called Kol HaTor. Tor is a tough vav reish. That means the sound of the turtle dove, the sound of the dove, taken from Shir HaShirim, Kol HaTor. And Kol HaTor is a bit of a controversial book a little bit. It was not written by the Gra. It was written by a Talmud of the Gra, Rav Hillel of Shklov. Shklov was a city in Lithuania. And Rav Hillel of Shklov was one of the Talmidei Hagra who came to Eretz Yisrael. And in fact, he writes there, very fascinating, he writes that, we know the Gra left, right? The Gra left Vilna to go to Eretz Yisrael, but he never made it. A few months later, he just came back without ever having arrived in Eretz Yisrael. No one ever had the chutzpah to say, hey, what you doing here? He left, came back, and that was the end of it. And no one really knows why. And to this very day, there's a lot of speculation, all sorts of cheshbainis. I'll mention a little bit about it. But Rav Hillel of Shklov writes that the Talmidim HaGra had a Messiah, that the Gra was a Gilgul of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the same way it was Nigzar that Moshe Rabbeinu could not enter Eretz Yisrael, it was Nigzar that the Gra could not enter Eretz Yisrael. But the Talmidei HaGra, they said, we are a Nitzos of Yoshua ben Nun. We are a spark of Yeshua ben Nun, so we are given Rishus to enter Eretz Yisrael. So I'll talk in a moment about what reasons might be why the Gra didn't go to Eretz Yisrael. But the Kol HaTor is a sefer written by Rav Hillel of Shklov based on the Gra's Shitas about Yishuv Eretz Yisrael and about Mashiach ben Yosef and about bringing the Geula. So it's largely based on Kabbalah and the like. In fact, the Gra talks about the fact that physically building up Eretz Yisrael is also a very important stage in bringing Geula. Now, it's not just the Ruchnius, it's even the Gashmius, when it's done al Tyrus HaKodesh. And that is why the Yeshuvim in Yerushalayim that were built by Talmidei HaGra, such as Mea Sharim, Nachal HaShiva, the first neighborhoods outside of, if you'd be in Yerushalayim 1840, there literally was no city outside of the old city. I mean, there was the walled city and everything was empty. It wasn't like until, I don't have the exact dates, but like the 1860s, they began, Moses Montefiore, began to give money to build neighborhoods outside of the old city walls because the old city was so crowded, full of disease, full of starvation. People were dropping dead from cholera. So they had to, be outside, but they were scared to live outside because then they could be open to Arabs and all sorts of attacks. So whatever it was, the people who actually built the first neighborhoods, Mea Sharim, Nachal HaShiva, Yemin Moshe, these were the first neighborhoods out of the old city. They were Talmidei HaGra, and they were makbid that no guy, no non-religious Jew should be mishtatef. They put down the bricks, they did the plumbing, because they felt that the hishtatfus in the physical binyan haaretz should also be done b'kedusha, as a step towards bringing the geula. You see, so they actually were the builders, the physical builders themselves. So the Kol HaTor is really a sefer that teaches the Vilna Gaon Shitas about Golus and Geula, Mashiach ben Yosef. Now it's a little controversial because for like 150 years after the Gros Patira, it was only circulating in Ksav Yad. It was not printed, and only Yechidim had it. But it had a big hashpah on the Netziv, a big hashpah on many of the Gedalim in Lita. Some people claim it was partially forged because there's another passage in there which is really a digression, but it says there, they quote, that the Gra said, any secular chachma that you don't know means there's 10 times the measures, for every measure of chachma you don't know, you're missing 10 measures of Torah, which means you have to know chachmas chitzonius. Now that doesn't mean you got to go to college or whatever it is, but you have to know chachmas chitzonius. So some people say, oh, the maskilim somehow got a hold of the Kol HaTorah and they put that in. Also, the Kol HaTorah was used by many as a pro-Zionist work. They say, oh, you see, the Gra was a Zionist. He supported settling Eretz Yisrael. Now, I mean, it depends how you define the term. If by Zionist you simply mean that the Gra held Yishuv Ha'aretz was important, yeah, he was a Zionist. If the Gra hold that building up Eretz Yisrael even physically, now this is already a shtickle chiddush, was important, the answer is yes. Fields and houses and factories, yeah, he held that was an important chayla. Did the Gra support having a Medina and a Medina? I mean, you can't. The Gra was not writing with those things in mind, but nevertheless, Kol HaTorah was used as kind of a sefer to show the Gra was Zionist, the Gra was pro-secular wisdom. So Kol HaTorah, some people were mevatel and they said, Kol HaTorah, it sounds too much of a Haskalah book. But Rav Chaim Friedlander, Mashgiach Panovich, Rav Dessler's Talmud Muvak, investigated the manuscripts and all the different things, and he was machlit. He was machlit that Kol HaTorah is from Hillel of Shklov, and it's an authentic makor for the teachings of the Gra. So the emissaries, I think his gushpanka is good enough for me at least, that it is a sefer that you can learn and rely upon. And in Kol HaTorah, the Gra does make the point that, see, here he's simply saying things are going to be very bad before Geula, whether it's because of day and night or whether it's because of labor and birth, Chavlei Mashiach. But in Kol HaTorah, he basically says that these things can be changed, meaning one scenario is Chavlei Mashiach are going to be very, very bitter, but he says through tshuva and through mitzvahs and through Abbas Yisrael and even through Binyan Haaretz, it's possible to have the Chavlei Mashiach mitigated. It's like an anesthesia. It's possible to make it easier. It's possible to short-circuit Goygu Magag. In other words, it's not mukhrach that there has to be all of the Chavlei Mashiach. They can be shortened based on the fundamental idea in Yiddishkeit generally that nevuos of bad things can always be changed. Okay, so it's important to understand that on one hand we have Chavlei Mashiach, on the other hand there are ways in which we could be mekel Chavlei Mashiach. Shemiras Shabbos is one of them. The Gemara says if you're Zohar in the 3 Sudas of Shabbos, you're Nitzel Migoygu Magag. That's even incorporated in the Zemiras. Me Chavlei Mashiach Yutzalu Lervacha. From the birth pains of Mashiach, we will be saved, right, through the Sudas of Shabbos. So there's all sorts of different things that a person can do. But of course, if I'm Zohar, so I'll be Nitzel, but that doesn't necessarily mean everyone else will be Nitzel. Meaning that's not canceling the whole thing. That just means I, as an individual, could be Zeicha to a Yeshua. But if Klal Yisrael themselves kind of do this, we don't like to talk about it so much, but because again, I don't like to take attention off us and focus on other people, but people pointed out that on October 7, the victims were overwhelmingly engaged in Chilul Shabbos v'Yom Tov, and miraculously, there were nearby kibbutzim that were Shomer Shabbos, and Hamas tried to get into them, but because their gate was closed, I actually have it on video, they couldn't get in. So you actually see, if you assume, again, I don't know, that these massacres are part of the Chavlei Mashiach, and you see that Yidden that were Shomer Shabbos were Nitzel from that Chavlei Mashiach, you have a visible sign that Mechavlei Mashiach Yitzalu Lervacha, that Shmiras Shabbos protected them from an aspect of Chavlei Mashiach. See, I want to point out the way I said it is a little different than You might understand. I'm not saying, please listen, I'm not saying that those people were massacred because they weren't keeping Shabbos. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm not blaming anybody. You understand what I'm saying is, this is Chevlei Mashiach. Chevlei Mashiach is a process of Geula. It's not the pshat, they got punished because they weren't keeping Shabbos. Rather, puntakert, those who kept Shabbos were nitzel mechavlei Mashiach. See, it's a very different way of putting it. That way you're not looking down at people. You're not saying they're bad and they got what they got. But it does mean they didn't have the protection of Shabbos. That's masel yu mechavlei Mashiach. And that's the Zemer of Shabbos, the Piyut. Ki yeshmer ha-Shabbos, from the Eben Ezra. Kel yishmereni. I keep Shabbos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will protect me. It's exactly, we mamish saw it b'einayim mamish. Okay, stop it.